welcome to the Intuitive Intelligence Podcast, where we shine wisdom on everyday issues of the heart, mind, and soul. I'm Bernadette Gold. We have a special guest tonight, but I'm going to start by doing our opening prayer. Heavenly Father, give us the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a heart to understand all you wish us to know. Help us co-create a life of love, joy, and compassion for ourselves and others. Welcome with me, everybody, Jacob Reid of Sacredphrenia. Hello, Jacob. How are you?
Hello, I am good. I'm excited to be here. I've been waiting for this day and it's finally come. So yeah, here we are.
Here we are. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Jacob. He is renaming schizophrenia a natural psychospiritual development process that we mistake for a brain disease. He believes one of the biggest reasons that our society is struggling is because we fail to initiate these men and women who are potential shamans. Instead of choosing to deaden their gifts through conventional methods right at the core of their awakenings. That's where Jacob comes in. As a mental health metamorphosis coach, as someone who himself has been through the fire, Jacob knows how to help people ground without shutting off their gifts. He knows how to help these so-called schizophrenics access their wisdom so that they can contribute to the planetary healing. And I know Jacob personally and have spoken with him at length. So I am super happy to have you here, Jake.
It is an honor. I mean, I actually was recalling the day that we first met, and it was accompanied by so much magic, you know, that the universe seemed to be telling me that I needed to really pay attention to this friendship. And over the years, it's really, you know, fruited. It's really blossomed.
Yeah, you found me on somebody else's podcast, I think.
That's true. Yeah, I think it was
Synchronicity.
Right. Synchronicity, right, with Noah Lampert.
Yep. Yeah.
Funny.
Right. Full circle. And now you're on my podcast.
It's kind of hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're right. It is a full circle kind of thing.
How cool is
that? And
synchronicities
all around. Yeah.
So tell us about your journey, because you have an interesting story and it's powerful.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, where do I begin? Really, it's been a decade-long spiritual journey. I've been to hell and back. I mean, I had a complete mental breakdown in 2010. The rug got ripped out from under me entirely, and I spent years, you know, putting myself back together. But as the years have gone by, I've come to understand that this is a natural process of development that we currently are not honoring in this culture. You know, as soon as we see someone kind of go off the deep end, we like to drug them, we like to numb them and just try to make it go away. It doesn't really go away. I mean, the people continue to suffer.
But they're sedated.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, is my internet okay? I think I need to put on my Wi-Fi.
You seem
signal.
Fine. You're coming through just fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's been my biggest blessing. You know, I formerly thought of it as my curse. I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia in 2011. And, you know, I just kind of, I was fortunate enough to have intuition early on that was telling me that this was something else, that there was something more occurring.
Right.
You know, so many people around me wanted me to go the allopathic route and just, you know, take medication and go that way. But something told me that wasn't right. So I listened to my guidance, and over the years, I mean, it was a grueling journey. It was a brutal awakening. That's kind of the way I see it now. But it led me to deeper psychic healing, and I think that is the true purpose of this type of process.
Right.
If given the proper space and the proper time and energy and guidance and tools and everything else. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what did you use and what did you do to heal yourself on the what the world calls alternative and natural route?
Right. So I was already fairly spiritually aware before my breakdown. In fact, that's, I think, part of what initiated my awakening or my breakdown. Is I delved so deep into spirituality. I had no idea what I was doing. It was kind of like, jumping into the deep end of the swimming pool without knowing how to swim. So, in the beginning, I did draw upon some, spiritual methods. I did pray and I did meditate, and, those methods, kept me kind of hanging on. But I was fortunate to make this connection that there was a food connection, so I started playing with my diet a lot and experimenting with different dietary protocols and really experiencing a lot of relief, that way. And as the years went on, I tried, dozens of different diets and detoxification modalities, understanding that there was a physical component to this challenge, as well as a psychological and a spiritual set of challenges.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you, Jacob? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, right? Like, but I mean, for someone who's facing this sort of a diagnosis, like realistically, how long did it take you to come out of that feeling of that dark place and hit that place of a breakthrough? Not necessarily completely awakened and beyond it, but to the place where you knew that you were going to be okay.
Well, I would say it wasn't until about 2012. It really was about 2 years of absolute torment, absolute soul torture. I mean, I was really being eaten alive by my thoughts for years on end. I mean, the first months following my breakdown, I was just, really living in a hell realm. I was actually embedded within a world of, demons and aliens, and just really lost in the sauce, not able to differentiate reality from, or what we call reality, like consensus reality, from fantasy, and conspiracy theories, and just whatever frightening theory came along, I would just kind of latch onto that. So yeah, I mean, it was, I think the first 3 or 4 months, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I just was like, there were times I was just screaming on the living room floor, and God bless my parents. I mean, they are very patient. They were willing to honor my wishes to go a natural route. Even early on, I could sense there's something else occurring. I kind of rejected the standard, medical analysis. So yeah, 2012 is when I started to think that there was a possibility I was going to make it out of this. I finally felt some calm. I started experimenting with niacin, believe it or not, like vitamin B3, and schizophrenics, or as I call them, sacredphrenics. The name of my business is Sacredphrenia. They are classically lacking in vitamin B3 because they're so full of adrenaline. I mean, they're literally in an adrenalized state, you know, like 24/7 practically. And niacin has a countering effect against adrenaline. So adrenaline kind of burns up all of our vitamin B3. So it's a really important nutrient to focus on. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. And I've seen that with people, even just with with depression and even anxiety. It's the same thing. A lot of people are vitamin B deficient, whether it's B3 or whatever. Niacin's amazing. One of the many, many tools that we can use to heal ourselves. But there was other components. I mean, because when I look at you and hear your story, I hear dark night of the soul, but intense dark night of the soul, right? That takes you through realms that most people aren't going to go through. But there are some really, and I say special, and I mean special, individuals that are very shamanic in nature, like you, right? That go through this initiation, and it's in the fire like none other.
Oh yeah, it is like the most, I wouldn't say the most intense suffering available, but you know, like mental suffering is of a variety that can't be compared to other types of suffering because it's so existential. It's just so central. Like it's your soul, it's your entire consciousness is panicking, and so I mean, I certainly, I can't speak to certain types of physical pain because I've not experienced, certain physical types of suffering, certain illnesses or disorders. But yeah, this truly is such a unique, edge. I think of it as an edge now, an edge against which I was growing for so many years, and it really did, force me to develop and forced soul growth in a profound way that can't be experienced elsewhere. And so, yeah, that's why I look at it as a not just a once in a lifetime opportunity, but like a once in a dozen lifetimes kind of opportunity, I mean, if treated in the right fashion. And unfortunately, like I said, we're not really doing that right now. We're not receiving the gift in our culture that is available in these processes. Yeah, which is really sad.
Well, but then along came Jacob Reid. So,
well, I mean, I'm part of a movement, and that's very kind of you. And I wish that I could say that I'm going to be responsible for this shift, but I really think that it's so many of us, so many people are waking up at the same time, and if I can inspire some people to awaken more quickly, then I'm all for that.
Right. Well, and so really, what is it that you're doing with Sacredphrenia, which is you're facilitating this metamorphosis through what the institutionalized medicine complex calls schizophrenia. You're facilitating people through their awakening, through their journeys. How are you doing that?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I have to be really careful with the way that I phrase that,
Sure.
and I thank you for also being, thoughtful, mindful about the way you phrased that, because I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't say that I cure, sacredphrenia or schizophrenia, because I don't. The reality is that I don't, and I would never claim to. People are their own healers, as you know, and as I think you've pointed out to me many times. We simply, as you said, facilitate the process, or kind of show people a curriculum or an outline or a map that they can follow to essentially, heal themselves. And so it's really beautiful the way that this map has been manifesting for me. I mean, it feels like I'm really being led by spirit. I mean, I've learned so many amazing things over the last decade, so many tools in my arsenal, but spirit seems to be really gifting me with like these finishing touches. And I mean, it'll continue transpiring for some time, but you know, it's like in the last year, especially, I've started just dialing it all in. Like I have a real confidence in, you know, my program. I have a program now. I have a system that people can go through that essentially will allow them to release trauma and to detoxify their bodies and their brains and to, you know, experience more mental balance and more spiritual connection. And yeah, it's just a very comprehensive, you know, package. It's hard to
I'm sure.
describe, you know, at this point. And I'm still, you know, my business is still rather young, so I'm still finding the language for it, but I'm really excited about what is developing.
I think the most exciting part about watching all of this and knowing you and your journey and just what you're putting out there is that you're taking this stigma of like hopelessness when it comes to the diagnosis of schizophrenia, and you're giving it a totally different package.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're wrapping it up as a gift and saying, look, this doesn't have to be the end of you. This can be a brand new beginning for you. And that is amazing.
Thank you. I mean, nothing excites me more than to take something that is dead and to just give it life, you know, like completely flip the script, take it from one end of the spectrum to the other. And you can't really picture two more opposite things. Like schizo, you know, schizo is used as such a derogatory term. I was actually called, you know, schizo once or twice in my journey. I didn't tend to reveal to people that I had this diagnosis because, of course, it is so stigmatized. I mean, you know, the first thing that comes to mind when people hear schizophrenia, they think, you know, this guy's a murderer or something. It's like the you know, Hollywood and the media have just drilled this false portrait into people's minds. It's so sad because there are millions of people with this diagnosis, and the vast majority of them are entirely peaceful, you know, are suffering inwardly, wouldn't hurt a fly. And oftentimes they're very sensitive beings, and they're very, they're afraid of violence. They would never perpetrate it, you know? So like, there's such a need for this transmutation to take place. And it seems like, yeah, I mean, not that many people are really stepping up to that opportunity. So I saw the opportunity, and I thought, man, this could really work. I could really breathe new life into this dead, you know, conception or topic. Yeah. So thank you for recognizing that. It's like the most exciting thing I could ever decide to do, you know, like it's just so thrilling.
I think one of the things, like I've talked to a few different people that have relatives that have been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And all of us have, you know, a connection either to someone directly in our family or a friend's relative that has been diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very scary because of the stuff that we've heard, you know. And I feel like it's a hypersensitivity, and it is something else wanting to be birthed. There's some beautiful transformation that wants to happen within a soul, but because we're not set up to support that, you know, we're not set up to spend, and we don't encourage people to spend time alone to, you know, really investigate what their inner self is telling them. I think it's exciting that they have someone like you to guide them. So what would that look like? I mean, what hope or optimism can you give people who have or know someone that's going through it.
Mm-hmm. And first of all, I just want to say that, I'm extending my net beyond, just the people who, we call, schizophrenic. I don't want to limit myself to just that one category, because, I believe with what I've learned, I can help a number of different people, going through different life passages and different mental health metamorphosis processes, and Sacredphrenia is not the only one. That's certainly my greatest specialty is what we call schizophrenia, just because of my own, diagnosis and what I experienced. But I think my message is that if I can make it, because I was so lost. I mean, I can't convey to you in a podcast like how lost I really was. I was just absolutely beyond. Can I swear on this? Yeah, I can swear, right? I
can't because of iTunes. Nope.
Oh, okay. I'll just say that I was beyond effed, or beyond screwed.
Yeah.
Is how I felt. Like there was no way out. I couldn't see a means for me to, make it out of my eternal predicament. So, if I can do it, like anybody can do it. And so, I really, I think it helps if a person is, younger and hasn't been entrenched in the system for decades. I mean, I have to be careful what I say about medication, but if a person has been, dependent upon a certain medication for a very long time, then, it's going to be, perhaps difficult to
detox.
I'm not saying I want to necessarily wean people off of all medication, but, a lot of medications do really alter the structures of the brain, and it does make the healing process a little bit different. Not necessarily impossible, just different. And I'm not as familiar with how to work with all of those.
I think it just takes longer. It literally just takes longer because you're having to go through a major healing process within the body and get your own hormones operating properly and the proper like dopamine, serotonin, all those things to release properly, where synthetically it's been controlled when someone's on medications for a very long time. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's, helpful for people to understand too. This is not like, you're not promising some miracle. You're saying this is a process,
right?
And that's real, but that it's possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, if one person can do it, then that opens up, a number of opportunities, right? And possibilities. And I'm not the only one either. I mean, there are thousands and millions of people who have recovered, and they don't tend to, make the headlines, but, they're out there. Yeah.
That's like the 100th monkey theory, right? That whole experiment where, one gets it and then teaches the others, and then suddenly it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I think it's important, but I think it's important to talk about these things because, a lot of times with spiritual podcasts, even like this, there's a lot of talk about awakening and evolution and ascension, and but we've got to talk about the real issues too that are plaguing the people who are on the precipice of awakening. And awakening is not pretty. I don't know anyone who's told me an awakening story that was pretty.
Right.
Right. It's brutal. No matter how long it lasts, I think it's brutal. Would you agree? Like, do you know that about other people's sort of experiences too?
Oh yeah. I mean, if a person thinks of themselves as awakened and has not experienced some form of that dark night of the soul, then, it's just a matter of time before, something's going to come crashing down. I hate to say it, but it's like they're going to get the rude awakening at some point if they have not faced their own shadow, because we all have a shadow, and we have to come to terms with it. And in order to really reach the higher states of consciousness, we have to also descend into the depths. That's the way of the shaman. The shaman works in all three worlds, the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And so I would agree with that. Absolutely.
So what do you think that the shamans, the modern day shamans, are here to do?
Well, is that a trick question?
No, I love hearing people's what they feel it is for them, because all of us have our own, especially being psychic, like we all have our own sort of feeling to it and how we describe it. And I love hearing how everyone describes it. So how would you describe that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the word shaman gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes it causes people to feel a little uneasy. First of all, like, who am I to call myself a shaman? I'm just like a white boy, living in Reno, Nevada. It's like, isn't the designation shaman reserved for indigenous people, like a very unique individual, chosen by the gods to heal his people or her people. I really think that there's kind of a shamanic spectrum. I think like all people have shamanic capacities. Like we all are meant to commune with the other side. We're meant to receive messages and to perhaps even journey, perhaps even go on like literal altered, journeys, psychedelic or, other types of shamanic journeys, essentially. People with sacredphrenia are kind of just like plunged into that world without any training. It's like overnight they're suddenly they're sort of living in the dream world. The dream world is kind of bleeding into their world, into what I call consensus reality. So, yeah, I'm still discovering what it means to be shamanic, like I do actually go on occasional, what you might call shamanic journeys, where I go into a trance state. I listen to drum beats, and I essentially travel, with my consciousness, kind of like through the universe. And that's sort of, I guess, the standard definition of what a shaman is someone who travels with their consciousness. And I think that state, or that experience, is available to more people than just, sacredphrenics, of course, but we have a special capacity to explore those worlds, just because we're so sensitive. Like it's readily available to us, should we decide to go that route. And it's important, I think, for a lot of us to consider doing that, because our world is in trouble. Our world is in chaos right now. And my belief is that part of the reason is that we're failing these potential shamans, because in any functioning tribal society or many non-Western societies, the shaman is really an important like stabilizing figure within the community. And without that person, you know, things can go a little bit haywire. So, you know, there are millions of people who we're currently medicating, and how different would our society be if instead of numbing those people, you know, we actually allowed them to receive messages from spirit. And of course, you know, some people on medication can do that, but I just, you know, I'm concerned that too many people are over drugged, and they're not able to access those states of consciousness as easily. Yeah.
And when you talk about sensitivities,
Mhm.
right? Because I really feel like the vast majority of people who are struggling with their gifts, whatever they may be, you know, whether you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia or depression or, I mean, ADHD, like since the 90s, kids have been medicated. Mine was one of them. It goes beyond just a normal emotional sensitivity, right? So when you talk about sensitivity,
you
what
know,
are
like
you including?
lately I've been starting to call schizophrenics or sacredphrenics. In fact, I should be putting the schizophrenics
I
in
know.
quotes, you know, so-called schizophrenics, because that is such a damaging term. But sensitive souls, you know, they're souls who are sensitive to so many different stimuli, you know, whether those be emotional, chemical, you know, electromagnetic, psychological, you know, energetic, just you name it. It's like, that was certainly my experience for so long, was that I got triggered by everything. Like I couldn't live in the world. I had to be just in my little cave, you know, sadly, you know, in my parents' house, you know, just my bedroom for, you know, so long, just years on end, just like trying to sort myself out, trying to get myself in order so that I could enter the world and be, you know, strong. And I'm happy to say that I'm entering that chapter now, where I can, you know, I can be on this podcast right now. Like, you know, I was so sensitive to people for so long, I couldn't even go into like grocery stores without feeling like I was in a war zone. Cause I mean, I was just affected by everybody, you know. It's like, I didn't have a functioning aura. I was just like reactive to every person around me. I was anxious, you know, that they could see how damaged I was. So I wasn't able to really like partake in normal social interactions. So yeah, this is a really big deal for me that I can, you know, like when we started the podcast, I was a little nervous, but you know, I could talk. I wasn't, you know, I didn't have to run the other way.
Right. So, well, and one of the reasons I want to bring this up is because there's different levels of sensitivity. And a lot of times, you know, people think, oh, they're sensitive. You know, those who are unawakened and unenlightened. So, you know, I've been called it. You're too sensitive. But there's a level of sensitivity that goes on overwhelm, which is more of what you're talking about, right? Where it's like sounds are too much, and you know, the electromagnetic frequencies from computers and cell phones and telephones and TVs, like everything is emitting a frequency, and you have many antennas all picking up different channels at one time, causing like it's not funneling into a nice, easy to understand system. It's just all at one time. Right. What I would call it, because I've had this happen to me many times, you know, you walk into a place and normal people can understand it like this. You go to a Chuck E. Cheese, for instance, like the worst place on the planet to go.
Yeah, right.
Even if you aren't that sensitive, but if you are, holy cow, right? Like Chuck E. Cheese is like the worst. You have a million children's energy screaming and running and temper tantrums and happiness all at one time. And it's like, you instantly go into overwhelm. But for those who are hypersensitive and open, like what you're talking about, it's all the time. It doesn't shut off, right? Which is what kicks the adrenals in as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's literally like the world is not safe on any level, you know, like I wasn't safe with my thoughts. I wasn't safe physically because everything I ate, I would react to because my digestion was so messed up. Like I couldn't digest food. So I would react to my food. You know, I ended up only being able to eat like, you know, 5 different foods without suffering some kind of allergic reaction. And then, you know, electromagnetics, I was so sensitive to like I was so sensitive to cell phones. I couldn't even hold a smartphone in my hand without it getting all tingly and like achy and stuff. Yeah, it was horrible. I was what you call like a canary in the coal mine, you know, like you send the canary into the coal mine to test whether there are any poisonous gases in there. And if the canary dies, then you know not to go in there. Yeah. So like that was me. And yeah, I would get like a sore throat if I went into certain buildings that were not, you know, chemically or electromagnetically, you know, safe. I would get depressed and get a headache and stuff. Yeah, it was just really bad. So it's just amazing that in I would say 3 or 4 years, I mean, I hardly have any of that anymore. I'm still, you know, I still have to be careful with my diet. I now just have a smartphone in my pocket like all the time. I don't even really think about it. So yeah, there's a level of sensitivity that is, what's the word that I want? It's excessive. It's,
yeah,
you know, it's beyond, it's not helpful. It's just a result of having a weak energy field. And so, you know, part of my program involves fortifying, you know, the physical body, but also strengthening the energy field so that we are not basically reacting to the world. We are projecting our own essence.
Right.
You know, we are basically exerting our will upon the world and you know, affecting the world and not allowing the world to affect us as much. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing though. And I think it's helpful, you know. So one of the last things I want to ask you, and before we go, I want to make sure that we cover this. Like if someone wanted to check out what you have to offer, you know, what coaching programs you have to offer. And I watched your video earlier today that just came out on Facebook. That was amazing and funny. And yeah, super cool. But where would they find you?
They can find me on, you know, just about any social media platform. You know, just search for Sacredphrenia. So that's just the word sacred with phrenia at the end, PHRENIA. And if you go to sacredphrenia.com, you can check out, you know, what I'm up to there. And, you know, like really those are the main channels. You know, I have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Yeah. So, and of course I do offer a free session with people. You know, I call it the altitude assessment, the Sacredphrenia altitude assessment. So I look at Sacredphrenia as being an initiation, you know, with different stages. So, you know, and you can look at a shamanic initiation as being similar in many ways to what I call, you know, Sacredphrenia, which has, you know, if you were able to complete the process, it results in a kind of illumination or enlightenment. So I like to help people determine where they're at on this mountain, you know, in the initiation process. How far are they in their process? And so that's kind of the purpose of that 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 offering. You know, it's an hour long, and people can
Wow.
learn a lot about their situation, and I can give them some helpful advice, and it's totally free. Yeah, and it's not just for people with Sacredphrenia. Again, it's for really anybody who's going through some type of spiritual emergency or emergence, some process where they are just being, you know, being torn apart in some way and are trying to put themselves back together. Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that Spiritual has told me about when we go through our awakening, you know, on our dark night of the soul, and because I had a few, and
Right.
some people do go through more than one.
Mhm.
You know, it seems like every time I go through a whole other level, I go and hit another dark night of the soul. Thankfully, they don't last as long as my first one did, which seemed like, you know, my entire childhood was a dark night of the soul, because I didn't have that support of anyone understanding who I was, what I was, you know, what I needed.
Mhm.
But from what spirits explained to me or shown me, it's kind of like we all, before we become awake and aware to who we really are, we have to hit 0 point. Everything
Mhm.
like flatlines, like everything you thought you knew no longer makes sense, right? Everything becomes nothing. And then out of that, nothing becomes everything. But in that place of nothingness, that that dark,
Mhm.
like I can't make sense of up or down or side to side, and I don't know where I am. It's rough. Would
Right.
you like, can you confirm that, deny that, like with what you've gone through and what you know with your own experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people need to undergo a kind of death, right?
Mhm.
They need to die to their old self before being able to awaken to their new self, their new life. They need to, their old structures need to pass away so that they can form something brand new, and kind of redesign the way that they operate in every way. So I would totally agree with that. I mean, I sure hope that it doesn't, you know, like the awakening process doesn't have to involve a brutal death for everyone. But then again, here I am saying that it was my biggest blessing. So it's kind of like the further you fall, the greater your rise will be. You know, like
Mhm.
I just you know, ordinary. What are ordinary pleasures for most people are now like blissful luxuries for me. You know, they're just like, you know, because I didn't experience peace in every moment. You know, I couldn't be having this conversation 5 years ago and be comfortable in my body. I mean, right now I would be ruminating on some, you know, disturbing metaphysical topic or something like that, or I'd be like, I just wouldn't be able to be with you. So this is such a gift, just being in this moment. So like ignore, you know, forget all the, or what I mean is not to even mention, you know, the highs that I'm experiencing in my life right now, like publishing that video earlier today. You know, that was so much fun. I made a rap video. Like it was, I
It was
mean,
cool.
it was just so, it was so beyond surreal, you know, just so enjoyable. So yeah, um I hope that people find the wisdom in the death process. I think that's what we're often ignoring, and what we need to kind of revivify in our culture. Yeah.
I think there's a gift in it. I think we get more compassionate, more appreciative,
Right.
for sure. You know,
Mhm.
you really, I don't think that we as human beings in this culture appreciate the miracle of life,
Mhm.
the ability to walk outside, you know, and go where we want, that freedom. I think most people take it for granted. And when you go through something like a dark night of the soul,
Mhm.
you don't take that for granted anymore. Simple
Mm-mm.
things, you know, that you can stand under a hot shower and not feel like your skin is crawling, or go out
Mhm.
into the supermarket and buy your own food without feeling
Mhm.
like everybody's out to get you or their energy is just so overwhelming. I think it's necessary. It's that necessary element that creates that appreciation. And then
Yes.
it creates compassion for others, which creates that connection to everybody else and source energy.
Yeah. And I mean that, and then that's really the, the final stage in this development process is turning your attention toward other people who are suffering now that you have been able to heal, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what a true shaman ends up stepping into is service to others. And as you say, his or her compassion is so enhanced by the suffering that he or she has experienced, and that's the only way. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, that is kind of how it works, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's amazing. I mean, it's an amazing ride, right? There's contrast, good, bad, white, black, right, wrong, however we want to look at it, up,
Mhm.
down, there's contrast. And on a spiritual level, we all go through that too as we're awakening. So, but that contrast brought you into my life and here on this podcast and
Yep.
brought you out to, you know, my growing listener audience and this
Mm.
new podcast format that we're now doing. So
Mhm.
I'm grateful. I'm sorry you had to suffer, Jake, but I'm grateful that you're here now
Mm.
and that
Yeah.
you are, you know, leading the way, shining the light for other people to find their way out of that dark place.
Mm.
So,
So
much
beautiful.
appreciation.
Yeah, I just, as you pointed out in the beginning, it is full circle. And today, I think I may have mentioned in the beginning that I had a synchronicity today. Um, did I say that? Yeah, I had a
You
synchronicity today.
mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, involving you
Oh,
because,
really?
yeah, I don't know if you remember, but the day that we spoke, actually, I guess it was, yeah, the day that we spoke for the first time, you told me that I was a bird leaving my cage.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next day, um, my roommate and I were sharing a bird at that time, a little pet bird who had just come into our lives maybe a month or two before that. And that little pet bird flew away from her cage. I'm not even kidding you. And like at first it was this horrible trauma because I loved that little bird, but then I realized that it was this gift that she was giving me, and it was accompanied by um, some of the words that you shared with me, some of the advice and the wisdom that you shared with me was so impactful. It really did assist my process of flight.
Cool.
And so like today, I as I was kind of putting the final touches on this video, I thought to myself, oh, it'd be cool to add a little bird cage with like a bird having broken free from it. I
Mhm.
hadn't even made the connection that I was going to be speaking with you later. I mean, it was just sort of this unconscious thing, but I went, oh yeah, bird cage. And then I looked up at the clock and it was 11:11 a.m. And I went, oh
Nice.
my God, I'm talking to Bernadette later today, aren't I? So it's like, it really is full circle.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, can't thank you enough, my friend, for all of the guidance you've given me, and for having me on your show. I mean, yeah, you've just been one of my biggest cheerleaders, and
And I
Just
will
means the world
continue
to
to
me.
be. I think the work that you're doing is super important. And I mean, honestly, I hope people will follow you. I shared your
Mhm.
your rap video earlier that was on Facebook on your Sacredphrenia page. And
Right.
yeah, I hope people will find you and like and follow what you're
Yeah.
doing because I think it's super important. And really, I hope that it gives them some hope of what's possible. And it's not easy.
No.
Clearing out your body and cleaning and detoxing, it's not easy. It's an ongoing process. I know because I'm doing it
Yeah.
right now with juicing. So,
Right.
yeah, but I think it's important that people they need that support. They need that blueprint too of, hey, how do I do this without having to study and go
Mhm.
through what you went through, a lot of trial and error, and finally found stuff that worked.
Right.
So,
I like to think of myself as, kind of this guinea pig who's been able
mhm.
to connect a lot of the dots that people unfortunately don't have the time or the money or the patience to connect, and so yeah, if I can be a guide in people's initiation process, then my life is complete,
Yeah,
so yeah, I think Sacredphrenia, I think it's going to enter the cultural lexicon. I really do. I have
I
I
do
have
too.
high hopes for it, and it's still just starting out. So, got my whole lifetime
You're
to.
off to a running start, though. Honestly, I think you are off to a running start, and I am ever so honored that you're here today and that you've shared your story with everybody, and that you continue forward, my dear. So thanks for coming on.
Mm, thank you,
Yeah.
Bernadette. Blessings
You're
to you and your
welcome.
audience. So much love.
All right, you guys. So thanks for joining us on this podcast. I'm going to put Jake's links here on our podcast page and reach out to him if you or someone you know thinks that he can be of help, because I believe in no coincidences. There are only synchronicities leading us on that path to what is going to heal us and help us on our journey. So have a great night, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode.